Entering the atmosphere in T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Doominal Crossing. What is up, Doom? How are you?
Pretty good, Andy. It's been a wild week in gaming, and surprisingly, not in terms of official news, but, we've got a little bit of some Metroid stuff, to look out for our fellow fans.
I thought you were referring to Eminem showing up at Fortnite. That's pretty wild.
I mean, honestly, Fortnite alone has been pretty wild. Eminem showed up, Peter Griffin showed up, your boy Solid Snake is coming soon to Fortnite.
Peter Griffin. Not even regular Peter Griffin. I saw someone on, I want to say it was the Detroit Red Wings, pulled the, I'm going to sound like I'm 1,000 years old here, but what's that stupid dance that they do in Fortnite?
Which one? There's a lot of stupid dances.
Oh, God. Not like the main one where you're like flossing, I think is what it's called. I could not sound any more ancient right now. It's the other one. It starts with a G.
What? Oh, the gritty. The gritty?
The gritty! Yeah, somebody sniped a goal and started doing the frickin' gritty. And like, it was so awesome because all these old hockey people are like, what is this filth in our game? So I loved it. I'm a fan of the gritty. Maybe I'll do it one day.
You see it a lot in football. Like, that's like kind of where it originated, I think.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Okay. We lost Dak today. He was supposed to be here, but we don't know where his whereabouts are right now. He may pop up at some point in this podcast. He may not, but we're gonna plow on. We got a great show for everybody, but there was a few things that I did want to get to, and I know that you have some stuff that you want to bring up, Doom. So I want to just quickly, before we get to Mapping Metroid, and we're finally getting to Samus Returns, which is awesome. I wanted to just say, over the last week, a lot of people tagged me, a lot of people messaged me, and they were like, hey, I just got my Spotify Wrapped, and I was listening to the Omega Metroid podcast. This is my top 5. I was listening to the Zelda cast, and I just want to say such a big thank you to everybody that listened, everybody that had us in their Spotify Wrapped. If we were number 1, number 5, whatever. I mean, honestly, if you listen to us at all, ever, that's so awesome. But yeah, to all those hunters out there that had the Omega Metroid pod in their Spotify Wrapped, that was so awesome. It made my day to see. So I just wanted to give a massive shout out to all you guys and thank you for that. Very cool.
Yeah, seriously, it's incredibly humbling, to have, so many people that like actually care about what we have to say, like on a weekly basis, nonetheless. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, no
like,
kidding.
Like, for real, y'all are the real MVPs, 100%.
Yeah,
but if you are a hardcore Metroid fan, maybe 1 week of Metroid content isn't quite enough for you. Maybe you're still starving for more stuff. And this week, I know that transition, man. That transition. If you're still starving for more Metroid content, we had 2 pretty big videos from some content creators that I'm a big fan of that released this week. Wayne is Boss on both these people are going to be on YouTube, but Wayne is Boss released a video, a Metroid retrospective on the remakes and remasters of the Metroid series, but primarily focusing on Zero Mission and Samus Returns, which of course we'll be talking about later today. That's about an hour long. And then I finished a game released, wait for it, a 6-hour documentary on the entire series. So, yeah, definitely pop some popcorn for that one, order a pizza. You'll be in it for a long haul. I would not recommend watching all 6 hours at once. I would recommend picking that off a few days at a time, because it's a lot to get through. But
brother,
nonetheless,
that's a Netflix limited series right there. Holy smokes.
Yeah, right. But yeah, nonetheless, both fantastic creators. Go subscribe to their channels, check out the videos, and then finally, for our YouTube listeners, you might notice that we have a new intro today. And I wanted to give a quick shout out to Bearborg from the Metroid Prime modding Discord, who actually helped me rip those Metroid Prime menu backgrounds that you saw. here, and you'll also be seeing again in the credits. You'll have to wait a little bit for that, but yeah, shout out to him for helping me get access to those. Yeah, you're a real one.
And I was so pumped when you made that transition. I was like, I've trained Doom well. He's about to plug the Patreon, isn't he? And you did it. No, all those videos are going to be awesome. But, I mean, if you want more Omega Metroid, we do have a Patreon. Actually, Doom and I were talking about that before we went on air. Actually, I promise we're going to get to the show eventually. But since we're plugging stuff here, this one's for you, pal. I was very fortunate enough to join Flashback 64, which is a podcast, a chronological N64 podcast by a friend of the show. You've seen him on the Alien and Review series, Gooey Fame, and his partner McKenna. And we had a former Bungie developer named Andrew join us as well. And we chatted about Doom 64 for like 2 hours. It was sweet. And that episode is out right meow, so you should go and check it out. It's very cool, especially, obviously, if you like Doom. But it's a cool podcast because it's not just like about the game. It's kind of about like that month in time. It's like a snapshot about I don't know, May 1996 or whatever it is that game came out. So cheap plug, but you should go check it out.
I watched the full episode. I can concur. It is wonderful. Definitely subscribe to Flashback 64. Check out Goo and Andy's other podcast, Virtual Theater, if you want to learn all about the you say the line. You got it. It's not me.
I was like, there's my guy. He has it. Video game movies and the stories that shaped them. That was pretty good though. You're back up. You're redeemed. So I love it. All right. So and by the way, we got I wanted to apologize for last week's audio. That was just a ginormous dumpster fire. I'm sorry, everybody. I know I sounded like I was at the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle. It was terrible. What can I say? You heard me trying to tell Doom what the hell the gritty was. I'm obviously like 1,000 years old and don't understand technology. So, thank you for putting up with that, everybody. I really appreciate that. Won't happen again. Hopefully, knock on wood. But yeah, some very cool stuff going on in the world of gaming this week. Of course, as you mentioned earlier, we've got the new GTA trailer that just dropped. I've never played GTA, but I always did want to check out Vice City. And as I understand, this is a return to Vice City. So I don't know, maybe I can get my synthwave kind of going on and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, so the original Vice City takes place in the 80s. That's kind of so Vice City and San Andreas are like kind of prequel spin-off games. San Andreas takes place in the 90s, Vice City in the 80s. The mainline games take place in like whatever current day they're set in. And so this is like a modern day take on Vice City. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like obviously, cool. Obviously we knew GTA 6 was coming for a while. It's nice to finally see some footage of it. Obviously we don't know too much about it, but like I kind of expect that from a first trailer. This is kind of usually how Rockstar kind of doles these out. I do want to say there's one absolutely gorgeous shot from the trailer. This overhead shot where it shows the highway going over the ocean. Oh my goodness. Just such a beautiful shot. Definitely the highlight of the trailer for me.
Yeah, maybe I'll check it out. I've never been like I never played GTA. I wasn't super high on Red Dead. Maybe I'll give it another shake at the stick there. Speaking of new game trailers, we have the Game Awards coming up this week, and there's not. I mean, obviously there's no Metroid nominated, and I understand why Metroid Prime HD or remastered rather was not nominated. I think that makes sense. Although I do think it's a little bit weird that Resident Evil 4 is nominated for Game of the Year. Although that's obviously a complete substantial remake.
I don't think that's weird at all. Especially because
I feel like I'm kind of like,
RE2 was also nominated back when that was a thing. FF7 was nominated for Game of the Year in 2020, I think. I've talked about this before. I'll make this rant short because we actually have to get onto the main episode soon. I don't have a problem with like full ground up remakes getting nominated for Game of the Year, because at that point it's basically, if it doesn't share a single line of code from the original source material, I still consider that like enough of an original work to be nominated. And like if that doesn't count, then like by that logic, you can't nominate Scarface for an Oscar. You can't nominate The Departed for an Oscar because those are remakes. And I don't know. I think that's silly. I think that it definitely is worthy of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not like going against your logic. I don't know. There's something about the Resident Evil 4 in particular to me that maybe it's because I think like that game really doesn't need to be remade. It really didn't need it. Like Code Veronica is still waiting in the wisps to be remade. That game is nigh unplayable, but regardless. So there's no Metroid up for the Game Awards, but we're gonna have a ton of new trailers and stuff to go over next week. I'm not really anticipating anything big for Nintendo, but I don't know. You never know. Maybe they'll surprise us with something beyond Switch has games. So we'll keep you locked on that. With that said, it's finally time to give Metroid Samus Returns its time in the sun. We have done a lot of mapping Metroids in our nearly 4 years on this podcast, but somehow we have missed Metroid Samus Returns, and we are going to right that wrong today. And we are going to be talking about what I think if you asked a lot of people, they might say that this is the best area in the game, and that is Area 7. And for everybody asking, well, that means absolutely nothing to me. What is Area 7? First of all, you're not alone. I forever and will always, until the end of time, just rant and rave and complain about how all the areas in this game are so generically named. It drives me absolutely bonkers. But from here on out, Area 7 is going to be referred to as the Chozo Laboratory because that's commonly the name that it's given. That's the name of the musical track that plays during it, and it's just kind of the vibe of everything. It's literally a laboratory, as we'll talk about here. So we're going to be using the terms Area 7 and Chozo Laboratory interchangeably. So just want to throw that out there and to get everybody on the same page. But yeah, we're finally here, and we are finally talking about Metroid Samus Returns. And before we actually even begin to talk about this area, you and I were kind of chatting before we came on air about some of the various areas and whatnot in this game, and I really think, like, is it just because of the naming? Is it just because the soundtrack isn't as strong as maybe we'd like it to be that, like, I think for a lot of people, me included, I have like a heck of a time trying to figure out like which area is which, whereas in AM2R, and I'm promise I'm not going to compare this game to AM2R, or I'm going to try not to anyways, but like I feel like those areas in my mind are so distinct and so like each area it's certainly its own entity. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if you feel that same way or not, but I always struggle a little bit with Samus Returns areas, and I think that's why it's taken us so long to get an area from this game on Mapping Metroid, even though like I love Samus Returns. I think it's one of my favorite Metroid games.
I think it's the area naming for sure. I think especially in the later areas, it gets hard to like keep track of which one is which. Which is, funny enough, it's the same critique I had with Metroid 2. Like those, like the first couple areas, like pretty easy to tell apart. But once you get to like 3 and beyond, then everything starts to blend together. Granted, it's done a little bit differently in this game because there's, actually a color palette to work off of and a map.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Yeah, for me, like I feel like Area 1, 3, and then Chozo Laboratory. But again, like I can't quite remember which of the specific numbers it is. But I just,
it makes it tough for sure. It makes it tough, and I think one thing that I think really helps Area 7 is that it really has a banger of a song that plays that really I think sets the tone. And usually I kind of leave music for the last little bit of our conversation, but I don't know, Doom. I figured we should just start off with that because I feel like this musical track is such a big part of this area's identity. Like, and you might remember too in the initial reveal trailer for Samus Returns, this track is the one that was playing, and I think they had the surface area as well. But they had this track, and it really had some life and some personality, and so it made me feel very optimistic for what the rest of the game might sound like. And we've had our disagreements about the soundtrack, but I think the game unfortunately may have peaked with this one tune, with the 2 songs that we saw in the initial reveal trailer. But it makes sense that's why they use them. But yeah, I feel like this musical track just like really gives this area an identity that I think a lot of areas really struggle to have. Because like aside from the area that uses Lower Brinstar, which is Area 4, and the surface theme, it's like which areas really stick out to you in terms of how they sound? Like how do they make you, like what do you remember about those? And I think the answer is like Not a lot, unfortunately.
I I half agree and half disagree. For me, like I'm a big Area 3 appreciator when it comes to the music, particularly that first scene that plays when you get down there. But I really like a lot of this game. This game is really creative in how it uses leitmotifs. And this theme is no exception, because obviously it's a wholly original piece of music, but then you have those Samus Aran theme choirs that just barely come in, near the end of each verse, just to kind of, almost tie that in. But otherwise, it's a wholly original piece, which I think is just super cool. Um, but yeah, I absolutely love stuff like that.
Well, I mean, I think it's certainly got to be the best piece of music for like an area specific piece of music in this game. I think that. I think this is like the Samus Returns signature track, to be honest.
I think
even more so than the Surface theme.
I would definitely agree for sure. Absolutely. Even though it's not my personal favorite, I would probably give that
Yeah.
to the Torian theme cover. I absolutely adore that piece, but this is definitely a highlight of the soundtrack that I think, again, like we have very differing opinions on the soundtrack, but this is one I think we can all agree on.
I wouldn't say like the Surface theme, as we all know, is an iconic track. I don't know that this would like be anybody's like maybe top 10. I don't know. Maybe it would be in your top 10, but I think in terms of like Samus Returns music, it's certainly the best, and certainly like gives this area an identity, which really helps. And that's not the only great musical track either, by the way. I know that this is an exclusive to Area 7, but you've got that banger of the Omega Metroid fight, and you fight 3 Omega Metroid series, so you hear it a couple different times. That sounds good. I love that theme, man. And one thing that I really love about Area 7 is the music that it does not have. And I'm sure you already know where I'm going with this, but from time immemorial, I've been complaining about how whenever you go into a heated area in Samus Returns, all you hear is like bah, bah, like right, it hits you, it slaps you right in the face. The lower north,
The Inception trailer.
pretty much, yeah. So like, there's no heated areas, there's nothing like that. It's just regular Chozo Laboratory almost throughout the whole thing. So I really appreciate that. I think the music really helps this area stand apart from all the other areas in the game.
It's actually funny. I am a bit more lenient. I don't know what the word I'm looking for. I'm a bit more forgiving of the soundtrack. I actually don't care that much for the Omega Metroid theme. It's kind of whatever for me. I don't hate it, but it doesn't really. I don't like. Yo, this theme though, man. Like, it's just kind of there. It is what it is. But
Well, let's talk about the area itself, and I guess that we should start out with just the general overall layout. And this area is a little bit unique in that, like, I recently played Samus Returns. I did a 100% run, and one thing that really stuck out to me that I don't think I remembered was like, this area is really small. In terms of all the areas in the game, I'm taking a quick look at the maps. Maybe it might be bigger than Area 1, but if it maybe just that. Other than that, it's got to be the smallest area in the game, which is, again, kind of unfortunate, because you've always been a proponent of this, but it's like, every time I start talking a little bit of smack about the Samus Returns soundtrack, you're like, well, listen, it has good music, you just don't hear it very often. And like, that made me think of Area 7, because like, it really is quite tiny, and half of that area, well, not half the area, but a decent chunk of the area is the Chozo seals as well, where you have like the caves, and you have the the purple acid and stuff like that. So you really don't get to hear that track for a large majority of the game. Like, very, very small snippets of Area 7. And I guess it's like, you'd rather be left wanting more than have the area too big. But that really struck me last time that I played it, because I just, in my mind, I just had pictured it so much bigger and so much like this sprawling, gigantic laboratory. And I guess it's really not.
yeah, you picture it bigger because it's like arguably one of the biggest highlights of the game. Like,
Yeah.
again, I think you were saying at the top of the episode, I think most people would consider, I certainly do, their favorite area in the game. And so, you go back to it, and then you realize like, oh, wait a minute, this is kind of like half of it, maybe less than half of an area, like compared to like the other main areas, because you're really not there for that long compared to like the other like main areas of the game at least.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, it stuck out to me like a sore thumb, really. There is some pretty cool stuff though going on in Area 7, just in terms of its overall layout, and I really like, this is the great point in a Metroid game where you are fully equipped. You got everything that you need, almost everything that you need. You don't have your little friend that you get at the end of the game, but you have all of your power-ups that you're ever going to need, so your path could pretty much be whatever you want it to be. And of course, the goal in here is we have 3 Omega Metroids to destroy, which I really like, actually. Like, I think as Samus Returns goes on, I really like that they kind of just, like, start to go less is more. And obviously, I think they had to, because these, fighting an Omega is not like fighting a Alpha. But just, like, having... I really like that they just focus on, like, the 3 big fights and didn't sprinkle in, like, a few more of those lesser Omega or Gamma fights in there either. So you got a lot of freedom to do whatever you want, and you got a lot of agency to basically tackle this area in whatever way that you want. There's, like, an optimized way to do it, but I really appreciate that about Area 7.
Yeah, and it does they do kind of sprawl out across the whole facility, so it does kind of force you to like, go around and explore like all of the corners of the map too, which I really like. And we were talking about this before the episode as well, but there's also quite a bit of Spiderspark shortcuts as well. And this is the area where on my first playthrough where I finally figured out that was even a thing, and I still to this day have absolutely no idea how I figured that out. I don't know. I was pressing random buttons and just I happened to create some gas. I don't know.
Yeah, I 100% looked it up because I was like, how the heck do I get this power bomb expansion? That I had no idea. And we'll talk about that later because there are some awesome Spiderspark expansions. But
yes.
Yeah, wicked stuff here actually. But yeah, like just there's a lot of like different ways that you can tackle this area, which I really appreciate. And I want to talk about some of the specific rooms actually, because this makes sense in what I was just saying, how like the room is small, or the area rather is smaller than I remember it. But I think when I obviously think of this area, you think of that room in Phendrana Drifts almost, where like you have the observatory and like all the planets flying around, because there's a lot of like really cool backgrounds and stuff here, techie backgrounds or whatever, but there's not as much of that as you might think. Actually, it's only in like a few select rooms, which again kind of struck me when I was playing this, because like the areas that there are those awesome set pieces are very memorable, even though they don't necessarily take up a whole big chunk of the map. There's one hallway which I want to shout out. It's right underneath the Omega Metroid in like the middle of the map. It's got some really cool stuff in the background. You've got like all these like, I don't even know, these like monitors. You've got these big green vats, and like maybe there's Aeon in there, maybe there's Metroids, I don't know. It's got to be one of the coolest looking rooms in the area. And of course there's also the observatory area itself, which I can't remember exactly where that is off the top of my head. I'll try and find it, but that might be one of the most gorgeous rooms in this game. Second, probably only to like that crystal cave room in Area 4 that has like the big crystal behind it. All the technology kind of stuff in here just looks like so cool, and again, really helps kind of give this a little bit of personality, a little bit of juice, a little bit of, oomph.
Yeah, this area has like 2 of my favorite things in Metroid, which is the technological aspect and also the gross, disgusting organic side of Metroid. And it kind of, especially when you get near those Omega hives, it really starts to like combine the 2 together, and it really they really dive back into like those original alien xenomorph roots when they're doing like all of the organic material, and how it's like almost corrupting these this artificial architecture. That's what I was looking for. And just the way just the way it all blends together. Like I absolutely love when Metroid just goes all in on that stuff.
Yeah, just like some of the rooms in here, like I really think that this level of detail, or not even level of detail, because you can't say that the other Samus Returns areas don't have like a really high quality level of detail, but like I think there's something to be said about like how much personality this has, like how different this is from all the other areas in the game, because like a lot of the other areas feature, you know, some fire areas, probably a water drop here or there. Like they kind of start to blend, which, as we mentioned, isn't helped by the soundtrack, which is a lot of very subtle ambient music. This area, I feel like just has like, you know, the Chozo Lab just has this bombastic track playing. You've got this gorgeous technology in the background. It looks like so awesome, and it really just makes it stick out. Maybe even more than it would in like, I don't know, like a regular Metroid game. Like if this area was in Metroid Dread, I don't know how much it would stick out, because like everything looks so awesome in Metroid Dread. But here it looks so phenomenal because it's so vibrant, so bright, so full of life, I feel like, compared to a lot of other things. And I kind of feel like I'm doing the other areas dirty a little bit, but I don't know, that's how I feel.
Well, I don't think you're doing the other areas dirty. I just think, yeah, this area just really stands out. Like, there's a reason why, you know, many people consider this the best one in the game. It actually, I almost want to give this a point in favor in this over AM2R, because I feel like AM2R is my second favorite Metroid game. I am not dissing AM2R here. Let's be very clear here, folks. But like AM2R, like a lot of those areas are, you know, repurposed facilities, and, you know, every single area has like a big technological piece of, you know, whether it be the distribution center or the tower or the hydro station and whatnot. Whereas Samus Returns, like you have a little bit of that. Like Area 3, you have, you have the abandoned mining facility. Area 2, you know, you have that underground dam, which I don't know what the purpose of an underground dam is, but it is a cool visual set piece. But yeah, you don't really get a lot of that. And then all of a sudden you enter Area 7 and it's just like complete set change, just highly advanced. It kind of reminds me a lot of Sanctuary Fortress, actually, and kind of the juxtaposition of that versus everything else you encountered.
That's a good comparison. Yeah, everything else in that game has just a certain style and a certain palette to it, and then you get to Sanctuary and everything just flips on its head. I really like that comparison, actually. That's a great comparison.
Even like the basic color palettes, because like I think we talked about this back in definitive ranking, but Samus Returns, it has a very brown and yellow like filtered color palette like over most of its areas. Not in Area 7, completely different. Area 4 too. Area 4 also has like a lot of pinks and blues as well, but like Area 7 especially, like definitely stands out amongst all that.
Mm-hmm. It definitely looks the best, I think, among all the different areas. We could probably agree on that. Another thing too is like just flipping over and talking about just some of the in-game lore, some of the story behind the area. This is it. This is where it happened. This is the origin of this series. This is where the Metroids were literally created. Like, this is a cool place to be. Like, there's a lot of like I don't know, just like rich history here. It makes me kind of feel like almost tingly a little bit just thinking about it. Like, just like this is where it all started. So I really love the idea. I mentioned that, you can see some of the rooms that have like the big test tubes, the big vats at the back of them. Not hard to extrapolate that, is there Aeon in there? Is that what they're using to create these Metroids? Is that what caused them to evolve? Of course, you also have the really cool shot of the first Metroid being born. It's got all this like green ooze coming off of it. That's in the Chozo memories when you 100% the items for here. Very cool stuff. But yeah, there's something like almost sacred, I feel like, about this area, which is funny because it's like the sacred area of birth, but also like another theme that we've seen in Metroid, which is like all this like technology, which is always usually kind of corrupted or goes by the wayside and needs to be put back into check by Samus. It's just like lore wise, I feel like it's very cool, and just kind of, I hold it in a little bit of special regard, knowing that this is where it all began.
Yeah, literally, this is like where if this room did not exist, Metroid, the Metroid series as we know it would not exist at all. Everything, this one room started arguably one of the greatest series ever made.
So yeah, very, very cool stuff. I do like that. Apparently, I don't know that I've actually noticed them myself, but apparently some of the monitors in here, if you look hard enough, you can see like little hints that they're monitoring the X parasites. Little cool Easter egg. I've never seen that, but I might have to check that out.
Yeah, I want to check that out now. I've never noticed that.
I'm sure it's like the smallest little Easter egg, or somebody could have been pulling my leg and I just made a fool of myself. But either way, if that's true, I think that's very cool. Let's talk about some of these enemies that we got going on in Area 7, because I think that is another strength of the Chozo Laboratory here. And I could be wrong, but I don't know that any of the enemies that we get are necessarily new at this point. There might be a few, but I feel like this area just has a strong collection of like all of those like robotic enemies that you need to use your beam burst on to defeat. And it very much fits the theme in like a very cool kind of way. Like, and there's a few enemies that I want to shout out in particular. And the first of them, and there's a really cool room where there's like several of these robots, but they're the ones that have like the green laser, and they just like go up and down, and they're shooting at you. And if they hit you, it's just absolute mayhem. It hurts like super, super bad. I love those guys. They look awesome. The second enemy I want to shout out is like my bitter enemy in this area. I cannot tell you how many times this little bastard got me when I was there, but it's that stupid robotic bug. And if it gets too close to you, it'll explode. And it doesn't do damage, but what it does is it causes you to not be able to use any of your Aeon abilities, which you desperately need to use your Beam Burst specifically in this area to get rid of all of those like insane Chozo things that are shooting out fireballs at rapid succession at you. That little gremlin spider is just, he's the worst guy. He's the worst.
And they always I kind of appreciate it, but like they always try to put them in like the most inconvenient
right.
locations too, like right outside of a morph ball tunnel. So it's like you got to move quick to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I appreciate a good skill check moment like that.
I mean, I do too, but they really are in like the most the worst, most inconvenient places that they possibly could be in. So yeah, shout out to those guys. There's a bunch of other cool enemies here as well. Of course, like I mentioned, you see some of these enemies earlier in the game, but just like all those like fire breathing statues, I just like, they're not statues, they're machines, but I just absolutely love them. I think that they look like super, super cool. Most of the other enemies in here, I believe you can, they're recycled from other areas. They're just they got a little bit more gumption to them, a little bit harder. Certainly, like, I think it's got to be probably the most challenging area in terms of like enemies, hitboxes, stuff like that you're going to see in the game up till this point. Maybe in the game at all, actually, because even in the Area 8, which is like the Metroid Nest, like, I think you're more or less like just basically ascending upwards in that one, where this one, it feels like you're really under attack like the entire time that you're there, in a really good way, by the way.
I will say the final area, I don't quite remember because I haven't played this game since we did the definitive ranking last year, but I don't believe this area has those snails that will charge you and explode them. Yeah, those are probably my least favorite enemy, and those things are filled to the brim in the final area. So I think I still have to give the edge to that.
Yeah, you make a good point. I was just bitching about those guys before we started recording. They're the worst. Like, they take out at least a full energy tank, and they're on the
easiest difficulty.
Yeah, and
that doesn't include hard mode or fusion mode.
They're in the morph ball tunnels. They're in like the small little sticky spots that, like, as soon as you see them, you're just like, here we go. So yeah, those are the worst enemies in the game. But I dare say I don't think that these spiders, the mechanical spiders, are too far behind, because they're probably cousins or something, because they are awful and they are annoying as hell. I was going to say, let's talk about the bosses in this area, but, I mean, there's really not any bosses, and, I mean, obviously, I know that we can count the 3 Omega Metroids that you fight, which, I mean, all of those are incredible boss fights in their own right, and I guess let's just take this opportunity to talk about those, but before we get there, I do think that one of the things that Samus Returns could have done, and maybe should have done a little bit more, is sprinkle in some other bosses. AM2R did this, and I thought that they were great effect. That it had Ceres, it had the Chorizo, had the robot that you fight at the bottom of the tower, and those really kind of helped break up. I feel like the I don't want to say monotony, but you know what I mean. Like you're fighting a lot of the same Metroids over and over. I think that this area, I'm thinking of what could have been, and I'm just picturing a wicked robotic kind of boss. I think that could have been really, really solid. And I think that Samus Returns in general probably needed 2-3 extra bosses that weren't Metroids, in addition to Arachnus and the Diggernaut and Ridley at the end of the game.
Yeah, completely agree with you there. I will say though, in terms of the actual Metroid fights themselves, I think all of them are pretty strong in what they're supposed to do. I actually, again, I actually think the Metroid fights are done better here than even AM2R. Which again, I love the Metroid fights in AM2R. Not throwing shade at all, but I think there's a lot more, especially the Omega and Zeta fights in particular. I think there's a lot more thought put into them. It allows you to use a lot more of your kit, whether it's with the grapple beam or whether it's just the way you have to maneuver through them. You can actually roll underneath the legs of the Omega Metroid when it's doing one of its attacks, which they brought back with the Emmys and Dread. So that's a pretty cool feature as well. And then of course the melee counter cutscenes are always just so much fun to pull off.
I agree with you. I think that I often when I'm talking about AM2R and I'm talking about Samus Returns, I often say these are very different games, even though they're based on the same game. And I think that is in no better place exemplified than in the Omega Metroid fight, because I think that this fight in Samus Returns is substantially better than the one in AM2R. But they're going for different things. In AM2R, it's kind of your classic a movement based fight almost, where the Omega Metroid is jumping around, you just got to hit it and try to avoid being hit. Whereas in Samus Returns, this is a brawl. This is a bare knuckle fight, and you're gonna have to go, if you want to win, you're gonna have to get in there and counter. You have to be really slick on your space jumping. You have to be really good with your grapple beam. There's so much that I absolutely love about these Omega Metroid fights, and this area has 3 Omega Metroids. And I'm totally fine with that. I think that these fights are so much fun that even though it's the same kind of thing, I just completely don't mind. And there's so much first of all, I love the way that the Omega Metroid looks in this game. It looks so intimidating and so grotesque, and it's got this gross scale to it. It just looks so awesome. You nailed it. The amount of utility that you need to use from your own kit in order to actually beat this thing is pretty staggering, because you're going to need to counter, you get the awesome cutscenes, you're going to need to grapple the thing down from the ceiling, you're going to need to use all of your beams to get rid of the debris falling from the ceiling, you're going to need to use your space jump when the Omega heats up the floor, you can roll under it to get to the other side. There's so much cool stuff. You can use your beam burst to really quickly splatter its armor. I think these fights are just absolutely phenomenal. And I would say the same thing almost about every Metroid fight, but certainly the Omega fight I think really stands out as one of the top tier ones in the game for me.
I just wanted to quickly point out the ceiling grapple, that's just for the Zeta Metroid. The Omega cannot crawl on the ceiling. That does not apply here.
You're right. I'm sorry. I'm watching my fight of the Omega as we speak, and I'm getting my ass kicked. But I love this fight, and there it is. We just did the combo. We got the counter. It looks so good. I could probably go on for a long time about the fight. You know what? The last thing I want to say about this fight too, I love the way that the Omega just moves in and it just backhands you, or it just slashes you, and it's just it's such a simple attack, but I think that it just adds so much. It's just this it's not a pretty attack. It's just a brutal punch to the face. And for me, I really think that adds to a boss battle for me, because it makes it feel a little bit more personal, a little bit more intense, a little bit more like you're in a fight and not like you're in a puzzle, as I've kind of talked about a few different times on the show. So I love this fight. I think that I could have done more than 3 in this area. I could have done more than 4 in the game. We got to bring Omega Metroids back. What's it going to take for them to get in a 3D game?
I mean, we already bring it back on a weekly basis.
Ayo. There we go.
But yeah, I think you brought up a great point though, with like, kind of the level of impact that kind of really makes these bosses feel terrifying. Because like, it's one thing if a boss looks terrifying, if it's barely doing any damage to you, well, then it's like, okay, well, like, come on, pull up. Where are you at?
Yeah.
Like, whereas here, I really like how this fight prioritizes risk versus reward because, because this thing has it's a very tall boss and it has a lot of range, so you want to keep your distance when you can, but at the same time, if you really want to damage it, you have to get up
right
close
up
and personal. And so it's like I really think it toes like that perfect line of risk versus reward, and that's what really makes this fight interesting and what makes it intense, like what makes the stakes feel so high, and then what makes it feel so satisfying to pull it off. Because basically, if you fail, you're gonna lose like half a tank of energy, maybe a full tank if you get comboed. But if you do pull it off, you get to pull off some insane damage and get a sick cutscene reward on top of it. So I absolutely love fights like this.
That's such a good point that you make. Actually, that's it's so true because like the best way, like truly, the phrase "the best defense is a good offense." That's truly the case for this fight. And like the best way is you just gotta kind of swallow your fear, run up and shoot this sucker right in the chest at close range and beam burst it to death. And the thing about the Omega Metroid 2 is the fight is hard, but I don't think that it's unfair. Like it hits hard, but it'll usually telegraph and give you like a second or two to really kind of get your bearings and respond and get out of the way if it's about to attack you, either with its tail, with its claw, whatever. Or sometimes you're just hanging around for a little bit, hoping that instead of the regular like bite, maybe it's going to give you the chance to melee counter. So it is a great example of risk versus reward. And just like I said, I have an appreciation for those fights where it's just like they're tough but fair. In that when I die, and Ravenbeak was a lot like this too. It's like when I die, like I feel I'm not frustrated at the game. I'm just like, God, like I missed this. I could have done this better. And I think that the Omega fights do a really good job of that too. Obviously the Zeta fights I think do as well. But yeah, it's just a really well done sequence. And I do wish that there was another boss here. I'm not gonna lie, but the 3 Omegas that we get, that's that'll do.
I gotta say, Mercury Steam has proven that they can cook when it comes to bosses between Samus Returns and especially Dread. And I know this isn't the topic of this podcast. We already talked about Metroid 6 before, but I just want to say that might be one of the things I'm most looking forward to when we get there. But that's for a previous episode we've done already.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong. Like in terms of their boss fight record, I can't think of like a stinker that they've done. I know that some people don't really like the Dragaiga fight, but I love it actually. I think that's like a great puzzle
like
fight.
It.
Yeah,
I think it's a great fight.
I do
certainly
too.
certainly not my favorite, but again, that's like comparing an Audi to a Ferrari.
Yeah,
so
like
maybe Arachnus in this game is the weakest fight.
Even that then, like, I think, like, what are you gonna do? Like, you want to make it true to who Arachnus is, right? Like, so I think that fight is very charming as well. And then, I mean, you've got some titans in there. You've got like Ravenbeak, you've got the Diggernaut, you've got Experiment Z57. Like, these, I'd put those boss fights up against any other boss fight in the series, and you might be coming out on top. So yeah, that's an aspect that I'm really looking forward to. Although, to circle back to what we were talking about at the beginning, I do want them to maybe spend a little bit more time on that soundtrack, because while Area 7 has awesome music, maybe Area 6 and Area 5 could have used a little bit more time in the oven, as it were. So yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about some of, well, you know what? I was going to say let's talk about some of the items that you get, but there really isn't any items to get here either, because by this point of the game, you are fully equipped, which is another reason why I think that, like, you just, again, when I was playing this game, I was like, the Chozo Laboratory is so small. There's really not that many cool Chozo-y things in the background. And maybe I was thinking that too, because not only is the area small, but, like, depending on how, efficient you are as a player, you can get through it decently quickly as well, because really all you have to do is go slam the 3 Omegas and then you're out of there. You don't have to get any items or upgrades or anything like that. You go and do your business and then you're on your way. So there isn't another item. I think if it were up to me, if it were up to me at any point, like, the screw attack would always be your final weapon that you get. I think in hindsight, maybe I would have placed the screw attack in Area 7 just so that it has something. Not that I think every area needs anything, but I don't know. It is a little bit too bad that you just kind of waltz through here as quick as you do. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe they could put the screw attack in here instead of Area 5, where I believe it is, and kept the power bombs in Area 6. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it before, but Samus Returns item pacing in general feels kind of
it's top
weird.
heavy, or like front loaded. Be the better term.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, actually. Yeah, it's very weird, and I feel like I definitely think you could have spaced some of those items. In particular, I feel like this area would be like perfect to get like screw attack.
Yeah, to defend that a little bit, like, I'm looking at Area 3 and Area 5, and even Area 2 to a certain extent, and those areas are just like chock-a-block full with power-ups. But those areas are also like gargantuan. Like, they are massive. I think Area 3 might be the biggest area in 2D Metroid. It's crazy big, and Area 5, if it's not as big, is right behind it. So there's definitely like a lot going on in those areas, but they do have a little bit more space, so it doesn't feel like you're tripping over all these different items. But I would have liked to see something in Area 7. Unfortunately, there's nothing really other than just other collectibles. And one thing that I kind of have a love and hate relationship with this, and I don't think I realized it until I did my last playthrough, but I was going through and I was like, I think I was getting ready to fight the Diggernaut, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to go in 100% the surface, the Area 1, Area 2, Area 3, just so that I don't have to like come back here. And you can't do it, which is kind of annoying, because obviously you need the Baby Metroid in order to get that last power-up. So while I love getting the Baby Metroid as an item, I think it's I love that, actually. I think it's one of the best things Metroid's ever done. It does, the fact that you have all of your gear, more or less, when you go into Area 7, there's no items, but you still can't 100% it, just kind of gnaws at me a little bit when I get in there. That's my only negative about this area.
I agree. I don't think there should have been any items that were locked behind the Baby Metroid. I do like how there's like some alternate paths you can take, or like maybe there's like a really tough puzzle that you have to do to get an item, or you can just use the Baby Metroid to like carve out like a quick shortcut to that. I feel like stuff like that is all right, but I definitely agree. Like, I'm not a fan of like the expansions being locked behind that.
You know, I wouldn't even say that I minded the expansions being locked behind it, but like, I don't know.
You have to go so out of your way for them, like, by that time, because like you've reached the end. You've reached the end game, and like some of those, like, you have to go back to like Area 1 to get some of those, like all the way at the start of the game. And unlike unlike some of the other Metroid maps where it's kind of like a hive where it's like all interconnected, Samus Returns, it's very level to level based. Level 1 goes to level 2, level 2 to 3, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Which again, like, I feel like that's mostly fine. Like, it's a very small nitpick, a very small critique. Like, I do enjoy going back and sweeping the board and getting all of these different items, but yeah, I don't know. It just, it feels like, it's kind of annoying, like, a little bit, and it would have been nice if there was, like, something else other than, like, a random missile or something to find in Area 7. And I guess you could say that for all the areas, but regardless, a small little nitpick there. Let's talk about some of these expansions that you can find in Area 7, and there is a lot of cool ones, and of course it's 2D Metroid, so we're going to have a little bit of a hard time describing exactly where they are or what you need to do, but we'll try our best. I really wish 2D Metroid would start naming its rooms. That's like as someone that writes walkthroughs for Metroid games, 2D Metroid games, that is like the bane of my existence, that you have to spend like half your time describing what room you're talking about. It's brutal.
You see, you have to go to this one hallway that's like about 3 squares right to the big room with like the thing in the back. Oh, I hate it.
Oh God, it's just like, can we not just name these guys? Like, please, for God's sakes. So yeah, let's start off with one of the first expansions that I got in here, and you mentioned it at the top. You start Spidersparking right away. And I think, like, I really love the concept of the Spiderspark, but they really could have done a better job telling you what to do. Like, where was the Decoras or Edakuns or something, like, showing you how to do this? That would have been a great little touch, actually, to put in. But nevertheless, you use it to get a powerbomb expansion right when you walk into, or pretty close when you walk into to Area 7. And it's pretty cool the way that you use it. You actually have to do it, I want to say twice. And you go like way back. You got to put on your protective armor. Let me correct myself. You only have to Spiderspark once. So you go down and you drop down this big narrow shaft. You can choose to Spiderspark right up to the very top. It'll get you to the far wall and you Spiderspark once again. And there's just like something just so magical, so glorious, so powerful about performing one of these. It's got a different kind of power to it, I feel like, than a regular Shine Spark. And I don't know why, but it just does.
It's because so with a Shine Spark you have this build up, like you start off slow, then you run, and then you have like a crouch and then a jump. There's a momentum, a cause and effect. With a power bomb, you go like from 0 to 100 like immediately, and there's something really satisfying about that. I do miss the speed booster in Samus Returns. I don't think the phase shift is a good replacement for that personally. Definitely happy to see that fixed in Dread. But I do agree though. I do miss that Spiderspark. Though again, like you mentioned, boy, they really needed like something. I don't even mind if like it wasn't like printed in the instructions, like even if there was like a vague hint or something. But this game doesn't give you anything. You just kind of have to fiddle around and just kind of get lucky, or look it up online, which I'm personally not a fan
that's
of.
What I did, because I swear to God, I spent like forever trying to figure out like, how the heck do I get this powerbomb expansion? I can see it, I can smell it, but I cannot get over there. And I knew that, like, we've talked about the Metroid language before, right? And like you can kind of tell when you see the spikes on the top and like there's a big long passageway. I was like, there has to be something simple that I'm missing. And I guess I never thought to put together that, like, A plus B equals C with the power bombs and the spider ball. I probably should have. And I don't know that I'd ever want to see spider sparking come back. I think that was a fine gimmick for Samus Returns, but probably should stay in Samus Returns. But I do think that it was kind of cool in this game specifically.
I think so. Here's the thing. It obviously, it all depends on the spider ball coming back, and obviously neither of us are fans of the spider ball in Samus Returns or OG Metroid 2, or even AM2R for that matter. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2D spider ball just hasn't really cooked.
It doesn't hit the same.
However, I do like the spider magnet in Dread, which is basically kind of a replacement of the ladders in Fusion, which I'm totally fine with. The ladders and the monkey bars. I could see like an evolution of the spider magnet where you can also use the morph ball on those magnetic surfaces and then use power bombs to spider spark off of those in places where you would otherwise not be able to charge a speed booster. I think there's potential there.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. I thought that the spider... oh god, what the hell is it called? What's it called in Dread again?
The spider magnet.
Spider magnet, thank you. I thought that was okay. It's okay. Like, it's not my favorite, but it's fine. So yeah, taking a look here, there's a few different, as I mentioned, Spiderspark puzzles in the Chozo Laboratory that are pretty cool. You can get another super missile. There's one expansion that I wanted to kind of try and talk about, but it's gonna be tough. And it's at like the very end, like when you're back into the purple aesthetic area. Samus Returns actually does this like quite consistently, where it has like one really difficult, hard to get expansion in that latter like purpley area of the area before you move on to whatever your next area is going to be. And this one is kind of a doozy. So you get it after you lower the acid and you break the Chozo seal and all that kind of stuff. It involves like a ton of different work here. So you have to go and you have to shoot like missile blocks, roll through a morph ball tunnel, quickly break a grapple block, somehow get back and shoot out this stupid missile block again, and somehow make it over to where you need to be before that missile block repopulates. And even if you have the what's the slow thing called again in Samus Returns?
I think it's called the phase shift.
Is that right? Whatever it is, we know what I'm talking about. Even if you have that, it's kind of like a dicey play in order to get here.
Or is it phase drift?
I think phase drift sounds right. Yeah.
I was getting flash shift confused with that. That's why. I'm pretty sure it's phase drift.
So the purpose of this expansion is to get you an Aeon tank, and it's like it's way harder than it looks, because you see it and you're just like, okay, missile, grapple, phase shift, whatever, or phase drift, whatever. But I'm watching my my gameplay right now. I was struggling to make this work, and I was just like could not nail it for whatever reason. And yeah, I don't know. I kind of like that Samus Returns does this. Just gives you a couple little devious expansions to get. Just something to brighten up that murky, gloomy, purple area before you move on, you know?
Yeah, I feel like all Metroid games have to have that one puzzle, you know? The one where it's just like, here we go again. Zero Mission has the infamous Ridley puzzle, which is actually... if you watch our guide, there's actually a really easy way to cheese that. So check that out if you're having trouble with the Morph Ball Bomb puzzle there. Fusion has plenty of those in the end game as well, which I'm a big fan of. And then Samus Returns has the one you just described as well.
Yeah, so I mean, and like the ones in, like I'm taking a look at Samus Returns, and in Samus Returns, I would say as a whole, and certainly in Area 7, like I don't think it has... I don't think it has any of those expansions where you're just like wow, that was a really clever, really well designed. Like Metroid Dread has countless of those. Like we could probably name off like several expansions. Most of them have to deal with the speed booster, which is probably why Samus Returns doesn't have that. But I think like a lot of what is in Samus Returns and specifically in Area 7 with all the spider sparking, I think like those are like really solid, like sort of challenging enough to get the synapses kind of firing a little bit. And you know, it's not just like a random like bomb here, drop down, get missile. You got to work a little bit for them. I wouldn't say that there's anything here that's like, again, like top tier, but definitely some good stuff that you can work towards.
It's less the puzzles themselves that stick out to me, and more that one Spiderspark shortcut that takes you from one side of the map to the other. That's the big one that stands out to me.
Yeah. Spidersparking is very cool. I don't want to see it come back, but I do like it in this game. So yeah, there we go. All right, we've talked about the bosses, we've talked about the music, we've talked about the items, we've talked about the expansions, we've talked about the in-game lore, we've talked about I think everything that we have here. Any final thoughts that you want to throw out for our friend the Chozo Laboratory Area 7 here?
Hey, you know, I've said before that, you know, I still like Samus Returns a lot. I probably don't like it as much as most people do. But that being said, this is easily the highlight of the game. And every single time I revisit this area, like, you know, I'm reminded of, like, you know, just how incredible this game can be at its peak. Mm-hmm. And, you know, again, like everything really comes together here. Like you rattled everything off pretty much. Like, you know, the music here, we would probably give a 5 out of 5. The art direction, 5 out of 5. You know, even if there was an original boss fight, the bosses would probably be a 5 out of 5. But even with 3 Omega Metroids, that's like still a pretty high 4 in my opinion. Like those, because the Omega fights are pretty freaking sweet if you ask me.
Yeah,
you know,
you can't complain about those, that's for sure.
Yeah, just overall, just a standout area. Yeah, I'll probably just end it there, because otherwise I'm just gonna go around in circles repeating myself.
Yeah, you know, I would say I agree. I think in like terms of areas in Samus Returns, I think this is probably my favorite for the reasons that you just listed: the Omega fights, the music, some of those cool expansions. One of the things that I realized when I was replaying Samus Returns again was, I think before I replayed it, I would have definitively said it's my favorite area by far. But I have grown to appreciate some of the other areas, even though I would say this about Samus Returns areas as a whole, and that I think that all of them are good to really good, but I don't know that there's any that I would classify as like really truly great. But I think the closest to hitting that point is probably Area 7. And it's missing just a few things for me in order to be like a truly, that amazing, great Metroid area. But the other thing that I would say, and this is more so about the areas of Samus Returns as a whole, because who knows when we're doing another mapping Metroid on Samus Returns. But I always butcher the saying, and I'm going to butcher it again, but here I go. I think that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, if that makes sense. Like I think that, like I said, like all the areas are good to great, but I think like when you take all of those areas together in succession, you get a great game. Even though the areas themselves are good to really good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. I think a lot of the areas, even some of the underwhelming areas, I feel like all of them have at least like one or two like really standout rooms that you remember. Like you were talking about, the giant crystal shaft in Area 4, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And as you go down and you bomb some of the blocks, more of that crystal starts to shatter and starts to collapse. Area 2, you have like these random creatures in the background that you never fight at all. They're just vibing in the background, which I think is really cool, just to have just some casual, non-hostile life, just living. You just get to watch them living their lives out.
I think like every area, you're right. Like it has something, maybe not necessarily like, I don't know if I personally would say like it has a room that I remember, but like every area has something cool. Like the surface area, great theme. Area 1 has a lot of cool abilities, and I'm a big fan of the Golden Temple from AM2R, so I'm just like, this is a really cool design. I love that. Area 2 has the Arachnus fight, which just makes me smile. It's very charming to me. Area 3 has, like, you go down the list, like, each area kind of has, like, something cool that you remember about it. And I think that when you put all of the areas into a big pot, and you add some spice, and you add whatever you want to add, and you start mixing it, you come out with a really quality stew, even if those ingredients are just kind of like, plain Jane, maybe potatoes and carrots. This is a great analogy I'm making.
It's like in Breath of the Wild when you mix the monster curry and you're like, oh, this is probably going to be nasty, but no, you actually just got an insanely buffed item. That's like kind of what Samus Returns does.
Honestly, it's like nobody likes radishes, right? Like, but you get a radish, you're just like, okay, like this is cool. You get a couple radishes in Breath of the Wild, you start cooking, and all of a sudden you've got a potion that maxes out your hearts by like 30. So you're just like, sweet, this is awesome. So I would say that about Samus Returns' areas as a whole, and I think, like I said, Area 7's probably the closest to that great area.
I feel like the big things, so like obviously like Area 7 is missing like a unique boss fight, and it's missing at least one unique power-up, aside from missile expansions. And I think that just comes to, the overall greater issue in that it's too small. If it was bigger, it would probably have those things.
Yeah, it probably would, but I'll tell you what, I still like me some Area 7 Chozo Laboratory. I'm hoping that we don't wait a whole long time to talk about some of these areas again in Mapping Metroid, but I will plug, because I needed to. I will plug, we have talked about Area 4 and Area 6 so far on the Great Metroid Area Ranking, so if you want some more detailed thoughts about that, consider heading on over to our Patreon page, and you can hear our episodes about those two areas as well, and see where, in the grand scheme of things, in all of the Metroid areas that we've ranked, and I think we're almost like a third of the way through now. You can check out where those areas have kind of ranked. They're probably exactly where you think they are. Not at the top, not at the bottom, somewhere in that sweet middle part. So, yeah, there it is. Chozo Laboratory. Good area. Good soundtrack. Like it.
It's fantastic.
All right, let's jam on out of here, Doom. I think we have talked more about Area 7 than any two people probably have in the history of Samus Returns. So, seems like a good time to end it. I have already plugged our Patreon, but I'm going to do it one more time. You can check out the Great Metroid Area Ranking, and you can check out some other stuff that we got going on there, too. We got the ZeldaCast Top 10s, we got the Spitari's Review. Sam and I just reviewed Twilight, which was well, let's just say there was a lot of outtakes that I decided to tack on.
I do want to say, so we got a lot of comments when you were talking about that, and a lot of people seem to agree with you about the Twilight Princess Twilight comparison,
Yes!
which
It's true!
Which again, I've never seen Twilight, so I can't compare the two, but I never would have thought that those two would be the same. So I'm kind of curious to watch this movie. I'm morbidly curious.
I'm telling you,
this
brother,
movie now.
you watch it, you're gonna be like, Andy was right. Hashtag Andy was right. I guarantee it. It's uncanny, actually. It freaked me out while I was watching it. So we got that going on Patreon.
We got the other M Spiteri cut. We got to get the Twilight Spiteri cut next.
That requires me having a grasp on what was going on. I didn't. But it wasn't horror. Like it was a fine time. I had a good time watching it. But I was just like, what the hell is going on? This is outrageous. But that's for another podcast on another day. So yeah, if you feel like firing up Metroid Samus Returns and you need a walkthrough or a map, why, my God, OmegaMetroid.com has you covered there. I'm in the process of writing the full walkthrough, but we definitely have a 100% map. You can check out all the Metroid locations, all the items, expansions, everything that you need is going to be on OmegaMetroid.com. We are over on Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, all that stuff. You can check us out at Omega Metroid Pod. I am at Spiteri316, and Doom is at Doom Lacrosse. And follow our boy Dak as well. He's at DakCity_. And lastly, we of course want you guys to check us out wherever you get your podcast. Like, subscribe, recommend, rate, review. If you got a Metroid fan in your life, tell them about the only weekly Metroid podcast. There is a very finite amount of people crazy enough to do a weekly Metroid podcast, and you're listening to them right now, by God. So go ahead and check that out. Looking forward to the Game Awards. Hoping we're seeing some cool stuff. Maybe Nintendo will surprise us. Maybe we'll get... Can you imagine if we get Metroid Prime 2 and 3? Should we just not even put that energy into the world?
I don't think so. I think we don't see those until February at the earliest.
Yeah.
I don't think we see that till February at the earliest. I'm not expecting I'm not expecting any Nintendo announcements. I know you were really hoping for a Switch 2 reveal. I don't think that's happening at the Game Awards either. But
well, I'm rapidly running out of time this year, and I agree. It's not happening at the Game Awards. So yeah, we'll see. I guess my proclamation that it's coming out in the early half of 2024, not looking so good. But I guess we'll see.
We'll see.
Still lots of time. All right, Metroid fans, that's going to do it for us this week. But of course, we're going to be back here same time, same Metroid channel next week. Until then, everybody, take care.